What happens when a cocky 32-year-old CEO fires a 56-year-old woman for being too old to keep up with technology? Well, buckle up because I'm about to tell you the most devastating revenge story in corporate history. This woman didn't just get even. She executed a masterpiece of legal destruction that cost her former company millions of dollars and left them begging on their knees for mercy. And the best part, every single move she made was 100% legal. By the end of this 28-minute deep dive, you'll understand why you should never, and I mean never, underestimate the power of experience and institutional knowledge. We're talking about stolen clients worth $12 million, crashed computer systems, mass resignations, and a complete corporate meltdown, all orchestrated by one brilliant woman who played the long game better than anyone I've ever seen. But before we dive into this absolutely insane tale of corporate warfare, you need to smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. Why? Because stories like this, stories of the underdog rising up and destroying their oppressors, these don't come around every day. And if you love seeing justice served ice cold, you're going to want to be here for every single video I drop. Seriously, hit that button. This story is about to get wild, and you don't want to miss a single detail of how Helen McRae became the most feared woman in corporate America. Let me paint you a picture of our hero, Helen McRae. This woman is 56 years old, sharp as a tack, and has been grinding in the logistics industry for over 2 decades. We're not talking about some office pushover here. Helen is the type of person who shows up to work at 7 a.m., stays until 7 p.m., and knows every single detail of how her company operates. Picture this. Helen started at Nexora Labs when it was literally just 12 people crammed into a rented warehouse in Indianapolis. She was a logistics coordinator, basically entry-level, but she had vision, work ethic, and an incredible ability to see systems and optimize them. Over 20 years, she watched this company grow from that tiny warehouse operation to a massive tech distribution powerhouse with over 200 employees, moving millions of dollars worth of equipment every single month. And here's the kicker: Helen didn't just watch it grow, she built it. She designed the shipping protocols that made deliveries efficient. She created the inventory management system that prevented costly mistakes. She personally trained most of the department heads. She negotiated the vendor relationships that kept costs down. She was Nexora Labs in every way that mattered. But then there's Tyler Brennan. Oh, Tyler. This guy is everything you hate about nepotism, wrapped up in a 32-year-old package with a psychology degree and zero real-world experience. Tyler got his position the old-fashioned way. His daddy, Robert Brennan, owned the company. While Helen was building systems and relationships, Tyler was probably still figuring out how to use Excel. But Daddy started handing him more and more responsibility because, family succession planning and all that corporate nonsense. Now Helen wasn't stupid. She could see the writing on the wall. Tyler had been making changes for months, most of them absolutely terrible. He'd been hiring recent college graduates with impressive degrees, but zero practical experience, convinced that youth automatically meant innovation. But here's what makes Helen a strategic genius. She'd been quietly preparing for this moment. 6 months before the events of our story, she'd started having conversations with James Morrison, the operations vice president at Veltrix Optics, Nexora's biggest competitor. James had been trying to recruit Helen for 3 years. Every time Nexora landed a major contract or streamlined a process that impressed the industry, James would call. Helen, we need someone with your expertise. Name your price. Seriously, whatever you want. And every time Helen would politely decline. Why? Loyalty. Old school, genuine loyalty to Robert Brennan, who had given her that first opportunity as a logistics coordinator all those years ago. But loyalty is a two-way street, right? And watching Robert's son systematically disrespect and undervalue the people who had built the company was slowly eroding Helen's patience. she started taking James's calls more seriously, not because she wanted to leave, but because she was smart enough to have a backup plan. What Helen didn't know yet was that her backup plan was about to become the most devastating corporate takedown in logistics history. The day that changed everything started like any other Tuesday morning. Helen arrived at Nexora Labs at 7 a.m., as she had for 20 years. She grabbed her coffee, reviewed the overnight shipping reports, and prepared for what she thought would be a routine day. At 9:15 a.m., her assistant Janine knocked on her door. "Helen, Tyler wants to see you in his office immediately." Now Helen had been called to Tyler's office before. Usually it was Tyler asking for help with some crisis that his inexperience had created, or wanting Helen to explain why his latest innovation wouldn't work in the real world. But something felt different this time. Janine's expression was worried, and there was an energy in the office. That kind of tension you feel right before a thunderstorm hits. Helen walked across the operations floor, past the workstations she had designed, past the employees she had trained, toward Tyler's corner office with its glass walls that gave him a view of everything. The irony wasn't lost on her that he was about to fire the person who had created the very systems that made his view worth having. She knocked on the door. "Come in," Tyler called, and Helen stepped into what would become the most expensive mistake in Nexora Labs history. Tyler was sitting behind his massive leather desk, a desk that probably cost more than most people make in a month. With that smug expression Helen had grown to despise. He didn't even look up when she entered. "Sit down, Helen," he said, finally glancing up with what he probably thought was an authoritative look, but just came across as arrogant dismissal. Helen sat, hands folded neatly in her lap, maintaining the professional composure she'd perfected over decades of dealing with difficult clients and situations. "Let's be honest here, Helen," Tyler said, leaning back in his chair with that insufferable smile. "Women your age just can't keep up with where this industry's headed. Technology moves fast, and frankly, I need people who can adapt." Let that sink in for a moment. Women your age, not "we're restructuring," not "we need different skills." He literally said, "Women your age can't keep up with technology," to a woman who had designed and built the technological infrastructure of his entire company. Helen sat there watching this 32-year-old boy, who had never worked a day outside his father's company, tell her she was obsolete. 20 years she had given to this place, and he was dismissing her like she was some outdated piece of equipment. Inside, Helen's heart was pounding. Her mind was racing through 20 years of late nights, crisis management, system improvements, and personal sacrifices. But her voice remained steady as steel. "I completely understand," she said calmly, forcing that practiced smile she'd perfected over decades. "You have to do what you think is best for the company." Tyler's eyebrows shot up. He had clearly expected an argument, maybe tears, possibly even a threat of legal action. Instead, he got composed agreement from a 56-year-old woman who had seen enough corporate politics to know when a battle was worth fighting in the moment. "Well, that's refreshing," Tyler said, shuffling through papers on his desk like Helen was already forgotten. "I was prepared for this to be more difficult. Most people don't take terminations so well." "I'm not most people," Helen replied, standing up and smoothing her navy blazer with the dignity of someone who knows their worth, even when others don't. As Helen walked out of Tyler's office, she passed those glass walls that had given him a view of the operations floor, the floor she had designed, optimized, and managed for 2 decades. Every workstation, every process, every efficiency improvement bore her fingerprints. Tyler had just fired the architect of his own success, and he was sitting behind his desk, probably feeling pretty good about his tough business decision. He had no idea that he had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would destroy everything his father had built. Helen cleaned out her desk methodically. 20 years of work life fit into 3 cardboard boxes, family photos, a few personal items, and copies of various documents and processes she had developed over the years, all completely legal to take, since she had created them. Employees kept stopping by. Janine, her assistant operations manager, was the first. "This is insane," she whispered, closing Helen's door. "Half our vendor contracts are in your name. The shipping software was your design. How does he expect us to manage without you?" "You'll figure it out," Helen said diplomatically, continuing to pack. Tyler seems confident in his new direction. What Helen didn't tell Janine, what she couldn't tell anyone yet, was that she had spent the previous night meticulously documenting every password, every vendor contact, every process detail, and emailing it all to her personal account. Not theft, just backup documentation of her own work. By the time Helen walked out of Nexora Labs that Friday afternoon, she had already set in motion a sequence of events that would make Tyler's strategic personnel change the most expensive business decision in company history. Here's what Tyler didn't know, what he couldn't have known, because he had never bothered to understand the business his father built. Helen McCrae wasn't just an employee. She was the living, breathing embodiment of institutional knowledge. Let me break down exactly what Tyler had just lost. The vendor relationships. Helen had personal relationships with 47 different suppliers and shipping partners, built over 20 years of problem-solving, crisis management, and mutual respect. These weren't just business contracts. These were partnerships built on trust. The client relationships. Nexora's biggest clients didn't just work with the company. They worked with Helen specifically. She knew their delivery schedules, their budget constraints, their seasonal fluctuations, their executive preferences. She was their primary point of contact. The system's knowledge, every software system, every database, every automated process had been either designed by Helen or modified by her over the years. She didn't just know how they worked, she knew why they worked that way, what would break them, and how to fix them when they inevitably did break. The password architecture. This is the genius part that Tyler never suspected. Helen had designed the security protocols for their vendor portals herself. The passwords followed patterns that only she knew, with automatic reset schedules that required manual intervention to maintain access. Tyler thought he was firing one middle-aged woman. What he actually did was remove the central nervous system of his entire operation. And Helen, she was about to show him exactly what that meant. Remember James Morrison from Veltrix Optics? The guy who had been trying to recruit Helen for 3 years. Well, Helen had already scheduled a lunch meeting with him that same day. What Tyler intended as Helen's farewell meeting had just become her final job interview. Romano's downtown Indianapolis, quiet corner booth, James Morrison sitting across from Helen with the biggest grin she'd ever seen on his face. "You're free," James said, barely able to contain his excitement. "When can you start?" "Monday," Helen replied, surprising him with the speed of her answer. "But there's something you should know," Helen continued, pulling out a thick folder from her briefcase. "I designed every operational system at Nexora, the shipping routes, vendor relationships, inventory protocols. All of it runs through processes I created, and I documented everything." James leaned forward, his expression sharpening like a predator who just spotted prey. "Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that Tyler Brennan just fired the only person who truly understands how his company operates. And there's no non-compete clause in my termination package." The folder Helen placed on the table contained 20 years of process improvements, vendor contacts, system specifications, and operational knowledge, all completely legal, since she had developed it herself. And Tyler had been so eager to get rid of her that he'd rushed through the paperwork without any retention agreements or consulting clauses. James signaled the waiter for champagne. "Helen, I think this is going to be a very profitable partnership." What happened next was a masterclass in strategic patience. Helen could have immediately started calling Nexor's clients, could have reached out to vendors, could have begun her revenge right away. But that's not how you execute a perfect takedown. Instead, Helen spent her final week at Nexora, observing. Tyler walked around the office with an air of self-satisfaction, clearly pleased with his difficult decision. He called an all-hands meeting Tuesday morning to announce organizational changes. As we move forward in an increasingly competitive market, Tyler announced to the assembled staff, we need leadership that can adapt to technological advances and industry evolution. That's why we've made some strategic personnel changes. Helen watched from the back of the conference room as confused glances were exchanged. Most of these people had worked with her for years. They knew exactly what strategic personnel changes meant, and they couldn't believe it. Helen McRae has decided to pursue other opportunities, Tyler continued, not even having the decency to acknowledge her presence in the room. We wish her well in her future endeavors. After the meeting, Helen's office became a pilgrimage site. Employee after employee stopped by to express their shock and disbelief. This is corporate suicide, whispered Gary from shipping. You know more about our routes than GPS systems do. Half our clients have your personal cell phone number, said Maria from customer service. They're going to freak out when they find out you're gone. The inventory software crashes every 3 months, noted David from IT. You're the only one who knows how to fix it. While everyone was panicking about her departure, Helen was methodically preparing for war. She spent Monday and Tuesday documenting every password, every vendor contact, every process detail, and sending it all to her personal email account. Wednesday, she started consulting remotely for Veltrix Optics. Thursday, she made 3 phone calls that would change everything. Thursday morning, Helen sat in her office for the last time and made 3 phone calls that would cost Nexora Labs $12 million in annual revenue. Let me break down each call for you, because this is where Helen's strategic brilliance really shines. Patricia, this is Helen McRae. Helen, I heard rumors you were leaving Nexora. Please tell me it's not true. I'm afraid it is, Patricia. Tyler Brennan felt the company needed younger leadership. There was a silence on the line that Helen knew meant Patricia was processing the implications. Patricia Holmes wasn't just a client. She and Helen had worked together for 8 years, navigating supply chain crises, coordinating complex deliveries, solving problems that would have cost both companies millions. That boy has no idea what he's lost, Patricia finally said. You've saved us millions in efficiency improvements over the years. Where are you going? I'm joining Veltrix Optics. James Morrison is their operations VP. Very professional organization. Send me a proposal, Patricia said immediately. Westall is always interested in working with professionals who understand our needs. Call number 1, $4.2 million in annual revenue. Gone. Gerald was more direct. Helen, I heard through the grapevine that you're leaving Nexora. What's the story? Tyler Brennan felt they needed leadership that could better adapt to technological advances. Gerald actually laughed. Are you kidding me? You designed their entire tech infrastructure. We've been working with you for 6 years specifically because you understand technology better than anyone in the industry. I appreciate that, Gerald. I'll be working with Veltrix Optics starting Monday. Have James call me Monday morning. We'll want to discuss transitioning our account. Call number 2, $3.8 million in annual revenue. Gone. Andrea didn't even let Helen finish explaining the situation. Stop right there. If Tyler Brennan fired you, then Tyler Brennan is an idiot. Where are you going? And how quickly can we follow you there? Call number 3, $4 million in annual revenue. Gone. By Thursday afternoon, Tyler's strategic personnel change had just cost Nexora Labs, their 3 largest clients, worth a combined $12 million annually. And the beautiful part, Tyler didn't even know it yet. Friday morning brought the first signs of the disaster Tyler had unknowingly set in motion. Helen arrived early, as she always had, to find Bradley Brown, Tyler's 28-year-old replacement with an MBA and 0 logistics experience, already at his desk, frantically clicking through spreadsheets. Good morning, Bradley, Helen said pleasantly. How are you settling in? Bradley looked up with the expression of a man who had just realized he was in way over his head. Helen, thank goodness you're here. I've been trying to understand the shipping protocols, but nothing makes sense. The software seems to be crashing every time I try to generate a route optimization report. Helen nodded sympathetically. The system can be temperamental. Did you update the vendor portal passwords? They reset automatically every 90 days. Bradley's face went pale. Vendor portal. Tyler didn't mention anything about vendor portals. Oh, Helen paused, letting the implications sink in. Well, there are 17 different vendor systems that need to be synchronized for the routing software to work properly. Each has its own access credentials and update schedule. Could you walk me through it? Bradley asked desperately. I'd love to help, Helen said, glancing at her watch, but I'm actually due at Human Resources in 10 minutes to finalize my departure paperwork, and then I have a lunch appointment. What Helen didn't mention was that her lunch appointment was with Patricia Holmes from Westall Distribution, where they would officially sign the contract, transferring their account to Veltrix Optics. Helen spent her last hour at Nexora Labs, going through the standard exit interview process. When HR asked if she had any concerns about the transition, she smiled politely and said that Tyler seemed very confident in his new direction. As she gathered her final belongings, her desk phone rang one last time. Helen McRae, Operations Director, she answered out of habit. Helen, it's Gerald Perkins at Microsystems. I need to discuss our contract renewal. Helen could see Tyler through his glass office wall, on a phone call of his own, gesturing animatedly. He looked pleased about something, probably telling someone about his brilliant strategic decisions. I appreciate that, Gerald. But as of today, I'm no longer with Nexora Labs. You'd need to speak with Tyler Brennan about any account concerns. That's exactly what I was afraid of, Gerald sighed. Helen, you've been our primary contact for 6 years. You know our needs, our timeline constraints, our budget parameters. Frankly, we're not comfortable working with anyone else. I understand completely. Business relationships are built on trust and experience. Where are you going? Because wherever it is, Microsystems would be very interested in following you there. Helen looked across the office at Tyler, who was still on his phone call, probably celebrating his tough business decision. I'll be working with Veltrix Optics starting Monday. James Morrison is their operations vice president. Very professional organization. Perfect. Have James call me Monday morning. We'll want to discuss transitioning our account. As Helen hung up, she noticed Tyler's phone call had ended. He was staring at his computer screen with a frown, clicking furiously at something that apparently wasn't working. The real fun was just beginning. Monday morning brought chaos to Nexora Labs and triumph to Veltrix Optics. Helen was settling into her new office, a beautiful space with a view of the bustling warehouse floor where her new team was already implementing efficiency improvements, when her old cell phone started buzzing with missed calls from Nexora Labs. 7 calls in the first hour, all from different numbers, all increasingly desperate. James Morrison knocked on Helen's door around 9 a.m., grinning like he'd won the lottery. 3 contracts, he said, holding up a folder. Westall, Microsystems, and Tech Solutions Plus, all signed with us this morning. Combined value, $12 million annually. That's wonderful, Helen replied, though she felt a small pang of something. Not quite guilt, but recognition of what this meant for her former colleagues, who had nothing to do with Tyler's decision. Tyler Brennan called our main line 4 times in the last hour, James continued. Apparently their shipping system crashed this morning, and none of their vendor portals are responding. Helen nodded thoughtfully. The quarterly authentication update probably triggered. All vendor passwords reset simultaneously on the first Monday of every quarter. It's built into the security protocol. And Tyler doesn't know this. Tyler doesn't know most things about operations. He assumed it was all automated. Helen's personal phone rang. The caller ID showed Robert Brennan, Tyler's father and the actual owner of Nexora Labs. Mr. Brennan, Helen answered formally. Helen, what the hell is going on? Robert's voice was strained. Tyler tells me you left Friday, and now our whole system is down. 3 of our biggest clients called this morning threatening to cancel their contracts. I'm sorry to hear you're having difficulties, Mr. Brennan. Don't give me the corporate response, Helen. We've known each other for 20 years. Tyler said you left to pursue other opportunities, but this timing can't be coincidental. Helen chose her words carefully. Tyler felt that the company needed younger leadership, someone who could better adapt to technological advances. I respected his decision. There was a long pause. Tyler made this decision without consulting me. I assumed he had your approval. He didn't. Robert's voice turned cold. Helen, I need you to come back. Whatever Tyler offered you elsewhere, I'll double it. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Brennan, but I've already committed to Veltrix Optics. My employment contract began this morning. Then at least help us transition. Consult for us temporarily. Help Bradley understand the systems. Helen looked out her new office window at the bustling Veltrix warehouse floor. I'd be happy to discuss consulting arrangements. My standard rate is $500 per hour, with a minimum 40-hour weekly commitment. Robert was quiet for a moment, probably doing the math. $20,000 per week to fix problems that wouldn't exist if his son hadn't fired her. We'll pay it, he said finally. I'll need the consulting agreement in writing, along with Tyler's written acknowledgement that my expertise is required. And Mr. Brennan, I'll also need a formal apology from Tyler for his comments about women my age being unable to keep up with technology. Another pause. I'll talk to Tyler. Take your time, Helen said pleasantly, though I should mention that your vendor authentication lockout resets every 7 days. If the passwords aren't updated by next Monday, you'll lose access to your primary shipping partners entirely. The calls continued throughout the week. Tyler himself called Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., leaving a desperate voicemail demanding Helen's help with what he called technical difficulties. No apology, no acknowledgement that he'd fired her with discriminatory language. Just demands for assistance now that his strategic personnel change was backfiring. Wednesday afternoon brought the moment Helen had been anticipating. Tyler Brennan walked into the Veltrix Optics lobby, his usual arrogance replaced by barely concealed desperation. Tyler entered Helen's office like a man walking to his execution. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by the nervous energy of someone whose carefully constructed world was collapsing. Helen, he said, attempting his old authoritative tone, we need to discuss this situation. Please sit down, Helen replied pleasantly, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. How can Veltrix Optics help you today? His face flushed at the deliberate formality. Cut the corporate speak, Helen. You know exactly why I'm here. I'm afraid I don't. Could you be more specific? Tyler's composure cracked slightly. The vendor systems, the client contracts, the shipping protocols. You designed all of it, and now it's falling apart. We both know this isn't coincidental. You're absolutely right, Helen said, leaning forward. I did design those systems over 20 years of work, actually. And you fired me because women my age can't keep up with technology. That's not, he started to protest. Let me finish, Helen interrupted, her voice remaining calm but firm. You dismissed me without consultation, without transition planning, and with discriminatory language. You assumed that innovation meant throwing away institutional knowledge. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look, maybe I was hasty. Maybe I didn't fully appreciate your contributions. Maybe, Helen smiled. Tyler, in 4 days, you've lost 3 major clients worth $12 million annually. Your shipping system is locked out until next Monday. Your new operations manager is having panic attacks, trying to understand processes that took me 2 decades to develop. So help us, he said desperately. Name your price. Helen leaned back in her chair, savoring the moment. My price is simple: a written apology acknowledging your discriminatory comments and your mistake in terminating me, posted publicly to the company website and sent to every vendor and client. His eyes widened. That's career suicide. Perhaps, Helen replied, but it's also accountability. Thursday morning brought news that made Helen's victory complete. James Morrison burst into her office with barely contained excitement, holding his phone and a stack of reports. "Helen, you need to see this," he said, spreading documents across her desk. Nexora Labs just lost their primary shipping contract with Continental Express. Their delivery network is completely shut down. Helen reviewed the termination notice with professional interest. Continental Express had been Nexora's backbone shipping partner for 15 years, a relationship she had personally negotiated and maintained. Without them, Nexora couldn't fulfill any client orders. "There's more," James continued. "Bradley Brown submitted his resignation this morning, effective immediately. He sent a company-wide email saying the position was beyond his capabilities." "That's unfortunate," Helen replied. Though she wasn't surprised, Bradley was a smart young man who'd realized he was being set up to fail in a position that required decades of experience. Her phone rang, displaying Robert Brennan's number again. "Helen, please." Robert's voice was broken when she answered. "Tyler will issue the apology, written, public, whatever you want. We just need you to help us salvage what's left." "It's too late for that, Mr. Brennan," Helen said gently. "Continental Express terminated your shipping agreement this morning. Without them, you can't fulfill orders for any remaining clients." There was a long silence. "How did you know about Continental?" "Because Patricia Holmes, at Westall Distribution, is on their board of directors. When she told them about Tyler's management style and discriminatory practices, they decided they didn't want to work with companies that treated experienced professionals that way." "This will destroy us," Robert whispered. "Yes," Helen agreed. "It probably will. Tyler made a choice last Friday. Now he gets to live with the consequences." Helen hung up and returned to her work, helping Veltrix Optics integrate 3 major new clients into their expanding network. Outside her office window, she could see delivery trucks bearing their company logo, efficiently executing the improved protocols she had designed. The future looked very bright indeed. She was finally working for people who understood that experience and wisdom were assets, not liabilities. And that, my friends, is how you execute the most devastating legal revenge in corporate history. Helen McRae didn't need lawyers, didn't need threats, didn't need to break a single law. She just let Tyler's own arrogance and discrimination destroy everything he thought he controlled. The lessons here are crystal clear. Never underestimate institutional knowledge. Never treat people with disrespect based on age or gender. Always respect the people who built your systems. Experience beats youth when it comes to complex operations. Relationships matter more than technology. Looking back on those pivotal days, Helen realized that Tyler's attempt to discard her had actually freed her to flourish in ways she never imagined possible. His downfall served as a powerful reminder that respect and experience should never be undervalued. If this story absolutely blew your mind like it blew mine, smash that like button right now, subscribe for more incredible revenge stories, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Helen's situation. And remember, respect your experienced colleagues, because you never know when that outdated person might be the only thing standing between success and total corporate annihilation. What's your biggest takeaway from Helen's story? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.